who's down in Who Newville were making their list, but some didn't know Walmart has the best brands for their gifts.
What about toys? Do they have brands kids have been wanting all year?
Yep, Barbie, Tony's, and Lego. Gifts that will make them all cheer.
Do you mean they have all the brands I adore?
They have Nintendo, Nespresso, Apple, and more.
What about...
So the Who answered questions from friends till they were blue. Each one listened and shouted, from Walmart? Who knew? Shop gifts from top brands for everyone on your list in the Walmart app.
Welcome back to the Epic Universal Podcast. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and this is the podcast where we cover the latest Universal news, rumors, and history. And as always, I'm joined by Eric Hersey. I guess if we're going to jump right into the news, Eric, Universal Pictures actually had the number one film at the box office this past weekend, Black Phone 2.
Okay.
I'm going to...
I was going to say Gabby's Dollhouse, but that's not quite there yet.
Actually, that was number 7, but it's been hanging in there.
Right.
And of course, Black Phone 2 is a sequel to the original Black Phone, which went out into theaters back in June of 2022. But we're not here to talk about that somewhat older movie. On today's show, we're going to actually do quite a bit of talking about a film that's celebrating its 40th anniversary just this year, right?
Yeah, Jim, and I just binged watched all 3 of them a month ago, so I just kind of was getting geared up. I didn't really realize today was Back to the Future Day.
In fact, what Eric is alluding to is we are actually recording this week's show on October 21st, 2025. And if you remember from Back to the Future 2, when, it's Doc and Marty, they go back to the far off year or the far ahead year of 2015 to stop Marty Jr. from mixing in with Biff's grandson. But anyway, that this is the day they arrive in the future, October 21st, 2015. So it's the 10th anniversary of Doc and Marty traveling to the future. But anyway, you came across and I guess Universal, in honor of this, is sending Back to the Future out into theaters again this year on October 31st, Halloween night. And you came across actually a pretty cool collectible that they're making available here.
Yeah, well, it looks like it's at AMC theaters, but I better say this right, because it sounds to me they're saying you get a light up time machine popcorn bucket. Mm-hmm. Notice it does not say DeLorean in there at all. And I'm wondering, do we still have that copyright? DeLoreans aren't being made anymore, right? Who's going to sue them?
I don't know about that, but...
Well, it must not be like exact make and model, but it's pretty cool looking. It's a popcorn bucket in the shape of a DeLorean or a time machine.
Yeah, have you noticed here at the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, we talk an awful lot about popcorn buckets, I mean, just between this show and Lauren's show, it's just sort of, we should just change it to the Jim Hill Media Popcorn Bucket Network and be done with it.
Listen, we could probably get some sponsors there, right?
We could. At least the Orville Redenbacher.
Pop secret.
Yes. That's exactly. We're talking to you. All right. Anyway, folks, lots of news this week, but also in the feature section of this week's show, we're going to, take a close look at how we actually got a Back to the Future. And it is honestly one of the funniest Hollywood stories ever. Again, that's later on in today's show. But Eric, you've got a bunch of news this time around.
Yeah, we're going to go over all the holiday festivities, and we're also, it looks like Universal is testing out a version of the single attraction Lightning Lane.
Yeah.
And like you said, we'll be talking about Back to the Future. But I think we should acknowledge our sponsor first, and there's nobody better to do that than Jim Hill himself, right?
Well, there we go. As he points out, we do have a sponsor, and that is unlockmagic.com. And if you're planning a trip to Universal Orlando or Walt Disney World, please check out unlockmagic.com. Listeners of the Epic Universal Podcast are saving up to 12% off of theme park tickets. And by the way, those discounts include after-hours parties like Mickey's Very Merry and Jollywood Nights. And as Mr. Chesta has been saying, those tickets are going fast, folks. The first 3 Mickey Very Merrys of this year are already sold out. Not quite sure there's the same demand for Jollywood Nights, but you get the idea. Anyway, seriously, you're headed down to Orlando, visit unlockedmagic.com and save today. All right. And anyway, we're just talking about the holiday season down at the Disney parks. Let's now pivot to talk about the holiday season at Universal. Oh, what do you got for me, Eric?
Well, let's just get some of the paperwork done at the first. So let's give some dates. Universal Orlando, it's November 21st to January 4th.
Mm-hmm.
So that is when the festivities. And over in Hollywood, it's just a couple days later. It's November 24th to January 4th.
Mm-hmm.
So, and we kind of got all the information that came out officially for both of the parks. So let's start over in Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
So they say Grinchmas returns in the Universal Plaza. They have a 65-foot tree, a nightly snowfall, which I did not know that they did that. And probably the only time you're going to get snow over in Hollywood.
I just want to stress here, Snope. Right. All right, so be a little careful sticking the tongue out, okay? I'm just saying.
Right, not so tasty.
There we go.
Yeah, and then they have the Who's perform, where I think in Orlando we got to see that last year, but that was all inside of the theater. So you can also meet the Grinch, Max, and Cindy Lou Who. You can do things like write postcards and decorate ornaments at the Whoville post office. So that was, in my opinion, one of the more magical things to do down at the Orlando park. So you could do that over in Hollywood. But there's also Christmas in the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, which features the lights, the garlands, and the return of the magic of Christmas at Hogwarts Castle projection show. So we caught that down in Orlando. Jim, is this kind of like a mirror? Like they're very similar on both coasts?
Oh, yeah. The projection shows, so to speak. But on the other hand, let's get to the big news, the thing that's debuting this year out in Hollywood.
Well, last year there was some I think there was a couple props at Super Nintendo World for Christmas time, but in this case it's now getting a full overlay, which I think we're all kind of excited about. I know as a theme park fan, I love the holiday overlays everywhere. But in this case, Mario and Luigi, they're getting snowmen. There's a superstar top tree, which is just pretty awesome. And then a limited edition power-up band stamps, Winter Wonder and Holiday Party. So I actually found this over at thewrap.com it looks like our very own Drew Taylor dropped this. And that's how we got all the information.
He's
everywhere.
That man, he's everywhere. Now, okay, we're going to assume that Hunter Hersey doesn't listen to this show. I'm going to assume there's going to be some, Super Nintendo World holiday merch. We may have to recruit somebody out in California to help us get some of this stuff for Hunter.
He doesn't have enough, right?
Hey, come on, the kid's got a dorm room, all right? Give him some way to celebrate the holidays. So, if anybody has an insight into what they'll be doing holiday merch-wise down in Super Nintendo World out at Universal Hollywood, please let us know, and let's talk. I want to make sure that kid has some fun stuff in his dorm room. So, all right, now we switch to the East Coast.
Right. So we know the Christmas is the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. So, but this it's at Hogsmeade in Diagon Alley. But this is the first. It's going to be the Ministry of Magic. So it is all they're going to doll up Paris and be interesting to see how that goes. But this obviously is the first time. But I know a lot of people were really excited for that. Yeah,
I mean, I have to say I'm hoping the timing works out on this because Len, Mr. Schul, and I are going to be down in Orlando next month. We'll be in town from the 15th to the 22nd. In fact, the three of us are supposed to be going over to Epic for a day and recording some shows there. But I'm really hoping that the stars align, and I'm actually there not just for, this will be my first time visiting Ministry of Magic, but also to get to see the holiday overlay here. just my luck, it'll be the next week. So
Right. Well, I loved how you said the stars align because there is actually going to be like holiday celebration and festive decor at Celestial Park. So that is
cool.
you're going to get a couple lands there, and it'll be interesting. We talked about Super Mario. There's no mention, so we might not get anything in Super Mario Land proper there. But we do know that and I saw this last year, the Frog Choir. So if you're familiar in Wizarding World, they'll be doing their holiday, and the Celestina Warbeck in the Banshees, which I've seen her perform. I think I saw her perform last year at the holiday special.
Okay.
Because we were down there, and then we saw the Magic of Christmas Hogwarts Castle Light Show. So that's there. Much like Grinchmas is going to be over there, and they have the Hula Day Spectacular, which is our favorite. And if you are into nostalgia, that's the best place to go to the bathroom if you're a boy, because there is the green slime on the tile.
There we go.
So,
in fact, BioReconstruct just this week confirmed that it's still there. So
yep.
Okay.
Yeah, super, super great. And then they still have the Macy's Holiday Parade, which was, you get all the big DreamWorks floats, Minions, all that. Also, there's an 80-foot lighting the tree. And I didn't mention, but Earl the Squirrel is all over the place, so it's our favorite character.
So again, he's part of this year's celebration. Do we know this?
Well, they didn't mention it, but why would they not?
Okay,
right?
All right. I mean,
I should hope.
I have
maybe
to admit,
it's assumption.
I'm a little, concerned. That all of these listing and no mention of my favorite rodent.
Well, you know what I just noticed here that at City Walk's Red Coconut Club transformed into Mistletoe Pine Ski Lodge, and that is where Earl the Squirrel's 12 Days of Christmas upstairs. So we have a mention of Earl. He should be around.
Okay,
for sure.
And it involves adult beverages, so I'm happy. Okay. Now, if I want to sample all of these wonderful holiday things while I'm in Florida, how might I do that when I arrive at the Universal Resort?
Well, they and I think they had this last year because I remember hearing about it because I was tempted to do it because I believe it was a pretty decent value. It's a Universal Holiday Tour, so you can get reserved show seating, parade viewing, and you can meet the Grinch, which I'm telling you right now was near impossible last year.
Yes.
Without a rope drop. It was a very long wait, and everyone that met him says he lives up to the expectations. He is very animated, very snarky, smells like onion. It's basically everything you want, right?
Now, speaking of which, you said, you mentioned affordable. And in fact, as I recall, this guided experience where you get reserved seating for, again, the Grinch show, likewise, a great spot to view the parade from. And again, you get to meet Santa, you get to meet the Grinch.
Right.
And there's even cookie decorating involved. It was $70 a person, right?
Right. Yeah. And to me, I mean, if we're in one of the next stores we're going to talk about is how much you can pay just to skip line.
Yes,
I mean, we're talking 3 hours to wait for the Grinch.
Right.
So, I mean, it's very much like, well, alone, you might want to pay that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But all right. And speaking of which, so there are other ways one can meet the Grinch this year, right?
Yeah, Jim, you can also, there's the Grinch and Friends character breakfast. So you can actually, and this is at the Circus McGurkus.
Which is a favorite of the Hersey family. Again, in fact, I want to say, what was it? Last year, you guys actually ate there twice, right? On one
Jim,
trip?
I think we ate there more than that.
Okay.
It's where we go.
Okay.
It's like we don't know of anywhere else. No, but you can eat there. It's a themed breakfast. We actually saw them setting it up the last time. We were going for the night before. We closed the place down and they kind of started setting it up for the next day.
Interesting.
So, yeah, you can meet the Grinch and Friends there. And truth be told, I don't know who's all there. If it's just the Who's in the Grinch, if it's other characters from the land, I'll have to look that up. But I imagine, that's a nice way to skip the line for the Grinch.
All true. And I just want to mention in passing the 11 Universal Hotels also features themed decor, holiday dining, even live entertainment. So lots to see at Universal Orlando this holiday season.
Yeah, I told the kids, I said we're going to record a podcast and we're going to talk about the holidays, and this is the true test. If I don't book a trip right after after this because this gets me, because I love the holidays down in Orlando. I said, if I don't book there, then we passed and we're okay. But we'll see. We'll see if I talked myself into going down, because this is my favorite time of the year.
Got it. Now, forgive me, folks, because we're about to enter, the part of the program where we release my inner Grinch. But please go on and tell the nice folks about what's being tested down at Universal now.
Well, there's basically a pay-per-ride express pass. So for those who follow all the other themes, if you're familiar with the Lightning Lane, like single pass kind of scenario over at the Disney parks, and that is essentially, hey, we'd like to do this ride now, and we will pay a one-time fee to do that. Universal is quietly testing this, and it started on October 16th, so just about a week ago.
Okay.
Guests could pay $24.99 per person. Now, this is some weird choices, but we got to test somewhere.
Yeah.
Revenge of the Mummy,
Right.
which I love. It's a great ride, but I wouldn't say that's the most high demand. And then Skull Island, Reign of Kong. So there were QR codes out on a stand to scan and get in the app, and essentially you could buy to skip that line. Now, I didn't necessarily know anybody that's done this yet, but we think it's kind of a trial balloon, right?
Yeah, and I and again, don't get me wrong. I was just talking about what a wonderful value it was to spend $70 and do that holiday tour. And yes, you're right. They got to test it somewhere, but I want to meet the brain damaged individual that's going to pay $24.99 to skip the line for Revenge of the Mummy. I mean, more to the point, half the reason for going on Skull Island, Reign of Kong is to walk through that queue. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, it just.
Well, Jim, I'll tell you, we went during our last trip. I don't even think it was our rope drop, but we did Revenge of the Mummy 3 times in a row at very early park open. Like, I think we went and did Gringotts, and then on our way back, we did Revenge of the Mummy 3 times in a row. So, not trying to, try to kill the opportunity for Universal to make $24.99.
Yeah.
How about we just go there at 9:15 in the morning?
But there we go. And look, I mean, I get that, Comcast, publicly held company, parent company of Universal, it's responsible thing. If Disney is doing this, and this is proven to be a huge revenue stream for the mouse, it behooves Universal to do the same thing. But
What kind of test results are we going to get back from this, though? Because I wouldn't, but I will tell you, I would pay $24.99 probably for Hagrid's or Velocicoaster if I didn't get there at park open. Because we've rope dropped both of those. But if it's 90 to 100, and especially on peak days, it's smart for them to try this. But I know the traditionalist in me that says, no, I don't want to. That's only going to make lines longer for us that are waiting. But I get it. We'll see what's going on. And, if you don't like this, you can always vote with your wallet.
There we go. Just will be interesting to see in the coming year whether or not this test then walks out to, as you mentioned, attractions like Hagrid's or Velocicoaster. And speaking of next year, we now have dates for Universal's Mardi Gras celebration in 2026, right?
Yeah, and not too much more. Just this is a nice little, if you're looking to plan, of course, head over to Unlocked Magic and buy your tickets. But February 7th to April 4th, 2026, the Mardi Gras International Flavors of Carnival celebrates, it returns. And that's kind of what we know. They say that, hey, it's going to be just as good of a lineup as last year when it comes to the acts, but no one's yet announced. But so for those that are wanting to visit that, and I will tell you, that is something on my to-do list. I feel like I have to start really conquering all these. So I'm going to look at dates and see what we have. Listen, I'm a completist, Jim. I have to do it all.
All right. Well, there we go. Enjoy your hurricanes. The beverage, not the actual weather event.
Right.
Okay. Right. And now, of course, because this is the Epic Universal podcast, we do have our contractually obligated mandatory Wicked news. So tell the nice folks about what we learned this week about that film coming in theaters next month.
Right. Well, the marketing department knows what they're doing, so they decided to put more the new costumes out. So for those have witnessed or been down to Universal this year, you notice that there's the Wicked experience, and it's a nice little walkthrough, kind of museum kind of look, and you could look and touch illegally, like my like grandma did, of Elphaba's and Glinda's dresses. Don't worry about the sanctions there, just But now these ones are in glass containers, so you're not necessarily going to touch these. But we have 4 new costumes, replacing the Oz Dust ballroom outfits from the first film. Boy, you're helping me out here. Is it Fiero's?
Yeah,
I watched
Fiero.
the movie,
No,
but I
you're
don't.
doing
All
great.
right.
You're doing great. Okay, all right.
The wedding suit, Madam. Give me a help.
Madam
I know who she is.
Morrible.
All right, Morrible's. Her robe is there.
Mm-hmm.
Now the Wizards Ensemble and Elphaba's nightwear. So those are the 4 new outfits. And that concludes our mandatory Wicked news for the week. We can't wait to see what comes up next week to promote this movie that comes out on the 21st of November.
There we go. All right. And again, speaking of the 21st, again, today, the day we're recording this podcast, October 21st, is Back to the Future Day. And when we get back from this break, we're going to tell you all about, how Back to the Future came to be. But first, there's this.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for this day.
Finished training for the day? Time to fight post-workout fatigue with Core Power Protein Shakes. They're packed with 26 grams of high-quality protein to build muscle and electrolytes to help hydrate. The nutrition you need to help your body replenish, rebuild, and repair post-workout so you can power on to the next one. Champion your recovery with Core Power. Visit corepower.com to learn more.
Every story you love, every invention that moves you, every idea you wished was yours, all began as nothing. Just a blank page with a blinking cursor, asking a simple question. What do you see? Great ideas start on Mac. Find out more on apple.com/Mac.
And we're back. And by the way, again, folks, I want to give credit where credit is due. It was Eric who came up with this particular idea for the feature when we were sort of spitballing this week's show. You had noticed that Back to the Future Day was coming up. And again, I have to say, I love this idea because, Eric, you were just mentioning you watched all 3 of the movies, back to back, this past month. Whereas I am an OG Back to the Future fan. In fact, I saw this Robert Zemeckis movie for the first time the weekend before it opened in theaters. That they did a preview screening the Saturday before it opened. And by the way, that was July 3rd, 1985.
Okay.
I saw it in a full house at the old General Cinemas complex in Framingham, Massachusetts, which, those of you who listen to Bay State, may remember the old Shoppers World complex. It was Eric, it was one of the very first malls, built in the 50s. It was an outdoor rather than indoor complex, but I saw it with a full house. Of crazed Steven Spielberg fans, because they all they'd heard is he produced it, and we had all just a year or so before had seen DT, and it's like, okay, Mr. Spielberg made it, we got to go. And it was one of my favorite movie going experiences of all time. I have to say that while I'm a fan of the original Back to the Future, not as big a fan of 2, largely because of, I have to ask this. You just watched, all 3 of the movies back to back. what about the whole, nobody calls me chicken thing that's introduced in 2? Does that work for you? I mean, it just comes out of the blue.
No.
Yeah.
No. And since I watched them back to back, it almost seems like if they started it in 1,
yes,
it would have made a little bit more sense. But it was like they needed a reason for something, and you could kind of see it was shoehorned.
Yep.
And I don't know if there's reason to that, but yeah, it doesn't really hold up.
No.
At this point in time, I don't.
No.
But it is what it is. It helped the storyline go through. But
yeah, and that said, folks, I have to say, I really enjoyed Back to the Future 3. In fact, which ends the trilogy on a high note. And I really have to say, even in the case of Back to the Future 2, that last 5 minutes where the lightning strikes the DeLorean and it disappears, and it's Marty, stranded in 55, and it starts to rain, and then that car rolls up, and it's like, oh crap, what's about to happen? And then the whole Western Union thing, and you learn that Doc's alive and he's in the past, and the button on this movie where it's Doc Brown standing triumphant, the exact thing we saw in Back to the Future 1, standing triumphant there in the street, even with the tire tracks with the flames still go down the road, and then Marty comes running up to him and is like, no, I sent you back to the future. No, I'm back from the future, and Doc Brown keels over, and then you get that wonderful credit of "to be concluded," and then all those shots from Back to the Future 3, and the footage showing them having another adventure in the Old West. I mean, that's such a wonderful, you go out of the movie on a high, to the effect of, oh, I want to see that movie.
It was, well, Jim, and tell you what, since I watched it, it was multi-generational. An 8-year-old, we all watched it. We watched all 3 of them together, an 8-year-olds, 15-year-old, and 18-year-old. And they were all immediately wanting to watch the next one afterwards. They did the job. And it held up. It really did. So you were ready. If you were in that theater, man, I would not have wanted to wait a year.
Oh, no. Well, but that was the interesting thing, that you didn't have to wait. The original Back to the Future 2 screened, it debuted November of '89, and then I want to say it was late May, early June. So you didn't have to wait a full year. But again, that logo at the end of that thing, we're Back to the Future 3, and there was huge noise in the audience, and can't wait to see that. Now, speaking of logos at the end of Back to the Future, and in fact, I want to ask, when you watched the original Back to the Future with the kids, you got that credit that said "to be continued," right?
I wish I could remember, but I asked myself, it seemed like that they knew, obviously, from what I understood, there wasn't going to be they didn't know there was going to be a second one.
No.
It seems like that it perfectly lines into the next. But yeah, I don't know. Did it run before?
Well,
in the theaters?
Here's the interesting thing. If you saw the original Back to the Future in theaters in July of '85, it was a standalone film. In fact, there was that scene at the end, roads, where are we going? We don't need roads, and the whole illusion of, what happened to our kids? They become, jerks. But, that was literally a gag that Zemeckis and Gale put in there, sort of teasing, well, the story could go on, but, fun little gag at the end. But it's only after, look, Back to the Future was the #1 box office hit for the entire year of 1985. And so, of course, Universal, as the money starts to pile up, well, we're doing a sequel, right? You guys are doing a sequel. And what was interesting about Gale and Zemeckis, they said, well, hang on, we can't say. You have to go talk to Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox, because we're not making this movie without them. You get those 2 guys to agree to come back, we'll write your movie. And they worked out the deal in early, 86. And so that's why when Back to the Future went out on VHS in November of that year, there was a brand new title card just before the credits. And it said, as soon as the DeLorean, sort of smashed into the screen of that lightning flash, a card that came up said, "to be continued," because we're making sequels, folks.
Right. And I remember them saying if they knew there was going to be a sequel, they probably wouldn't have had the girlfriend in there because they basically had to knock her out for all the second movie to move along the plot.
They did. So, now, mind you, they loved Leah Thompson, but again, you're not wrong. Just that when she came on board in the film, it was like, oh, she does such good work. But again, we need to get her off to the side here so Doc and Marty can have their adventure. And by the way, I have here at the house, Eric, a copy of Paradox, which was the original sequel, the script that was written for Back to the Future. Please note that I said sequel, singular, not sequels, because, all right, picture this. Bob Gale actually does the lion's share of the writing on Back to the Future, the sequel script, where Robert Zemeckis is over in London shooting Who Framed Roger Rabbit for Disney. And by the way, that started before the camera, that live action animated film, December of 86, and then continued for a bruising 7.5 months. And so now Zemeckis comes back to LA and looks at everything that Bob Gale has written, and it's like, there's too much stuff here for a single Back to the Future sequel. But at the same time, it's like, it's all really good. I don't want to cut any of it. So that's when Robert and Bob go to executives at Universal and say, how would you feel about 2 of these? Which, by the way, will be good. We'll shoot them back to back. So it'll be one long film, at least from a production standpoint. Now, mind you, that's going to be expensive. Upfront cost of $40 million, because remember, you have to actually build 2 different versions of Hill Valley. You have to build your set in the Old West in 85, and then you've got to build the one that's set up on the far distant world of 2015. It still cracks me up that we're sitting here in 2025, and Marty's far off future is 2015, and where the hell are the flying cars, folks? All right,
right. Even a hoverboard, for this matter, right?
There we go. Now, the other thing that cracks me up about this film is we jump back to 1980, which is when Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale first conceive the idea for Back to the Future. Eric, there wasn't a single studio in Hollywood that was willing to make this movie. And by the way, that does include Disney. They took the script to Disney. And Disney, now mind you, this is pre-Michael Eisner. So it's the old management team. So the old management team at Disney is reading the script, and it's like, this scene where Lorraine Baines, the teenager, is coming on so strong in regard to her attraction to Marty, who in the future is her teenage son. It's like that very much concerned the executive at Disney, and they're like, we can't make this movie. Now, how this movie eventually winds up being made at Universal, we'll talk about in a moment. But first, this.
Purina believes no one should have to make the impossible choice between their own safety and their pets. But nearly half of domestic abuse survivors delay leaving because they can't bring their pets with them. Through the Purple Leash Project, Purina is helping create more pet-friendly domestic violence shelters so survivors and their pets can escape and heal together. Visit Purina.com/purple to learn more.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
The all-new 2026 Hyundai Palisade Hybrid doesn't just turn heads. It commands respect. With its stunning exterior, luxurious interior with available captain seats, and spacious third-row seating and equipped with advanced technology, you and the family are making a statement before you even step out. Okay, Hyundai. Visit HyundaiUSA.com to learn more and experience the all-new 2026 Palisade Hybrid today.
And we're back. Before we continue with the story here, I just want to mention this is an absolutely great time to be a Back to the Future fan. I mean, for example, just last week, Flatiron Books published Future Boy, Back to the Future and My Journey Through the Space-Time Continuum, which has Michael J. Fox himself looking back at the making of this movie. In fact, I got a copy of it here at the house, and I want to note that he worked on this book with Nellie Fortenberry.
Well, I think I'm going to be heading over to Amazon or Audible, one of them, because that sounds... I would love to hear his experience because I know some of the backstory, and it sounds like it was grueling.
Well, but it actually, it's a great book for our podcast, for Epic Universal Podcast, because at one point in the book, Michael J. Fox talks about his very first visit as a civilian, a tourist coming down from Canada to Universal Studios Hollywood. And he talks about how his dad, on a previous visit, had actually been recruited out of the audience for the Screen Test Theater attraction on the lower lot. And the family had sprung for $8.99, you could buy the 8mm movie of you appearing in the show, and so, the notion is that when Michael J. Fox was a kid at home, he said, I must have watched that film of my dad in the theme park show hundreds of times. So, so finally, he's down there with his mom and his sister, and they go to the Screen Test Theater, and he said, I threw myself at our tour guide, and so he ends up in the exact same show as his dad. He performs, and then to Michael's utter horror, his mom won't spend the $8.99 to get his souvenir 8mm movie of the experience. He said, the irony, of course, is you jump ahead 4 years. I'm on the lower lot. I'm in the same space. I'm making an actual movie, but it's still. It still takes me off that I don't have my appearance in, the Screen Test Theater scene for 1 Adam 12. So,
that's awesome. It's good to hear he's one of us.
Yeah, yeah. That said, though, while making the actual making of the original Back to the Future, I mean, Fox alludes to, he was so tired by the end, he can't even remember the last day of shooting. He was running on fumes at the time. Because you got to remember, this is mid-January to April of that year, 1985. Remember, the movie is coming out on July 3rd of that year. And so during this time, Michael J. Fox is shooting Family Ties during the day and Back to the Future at night. So, again, Michael in the book talks about how sometimes he'd get confused when he was on set. Well, what project am I shooting? And he described in Future Boy, he describes this great moment where they're about to be shooting a scene of Back to the Future, and suddenly he's panicking. It's like, where's my briefcase? I need my briefcase. And one of the production assistants are like, Mr. Fox, it's Alex P. Keaton on Family Ties that always has a briefcase. You're the one who's wearing the down vest. It's like, oh yeah, okay, all right, sorry. But anyway, again, that's 1985, and again, if we jump back to 1980, well, this is when Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis actually first dream up Back to the Future, and as the story goes, Bob goes home for the holidays in 1979, and while he's at his parents' house, he comes across his dad's old high school yearbook. And again, he's a guy in his 20s, home with his parents who are in their 50s and their 60s. And it's a holiday, so everybody's kind of rubbing elbows and not entirely getting along. But that gets Bob thinking, to the notion of, look, if he could travel back in time and meet his dad when they were a similar age. And again, at this point, Gale's 28, could they have been real friends? And so anyway, Gale thinks about this idea. He goes back to Hollywood after the holidays. He shares this idea with Robert Zemeckis. By the way, the two of them met at the UC School of Cinema in the early 1970s and very soon became a writer-director team. And Zemeckis hears the story and says, no. You looked at his high school yearbook. That's when, that's when it would be interesting to meet your dad. If they, when he's in high school and he's awkward and, he's still trying to find his own way, and it's like, okay. And that's literally the germ of what eventually becomes Back to the Future. But again, here's the thing, Eric. It's by 1980, Zemeckis and Gale already had 3 films under their belt. They had I Want to Hold Your Hand from 1978. They had 1941 from 1979, and then Used Cars from 1980. And by the way, any one of these is a hugely entertaining thing to watch. Used Cars, particularly, it's Kurt Russell right after he left Disney. And it's a wild out there comedy, really well worth watching. But every one of these projects was either produced or directed, and when I say directed, I'm talking about 1941, but by Steven Spielberg, who's their mentor. And again, Eric, while all 3 of these movies had gotten good reviews and were praised for their inventive writing and unique concepts, I Want to Hold Your Hand, 1941, and Used Cars didn't sell enough tickets to turn a profit. And the buzz out in Hollywood then became that, well, look, the only way Robert and Bob ever get their movies made is because they're buddy Spielberg. He bails them out. He steps up. And Zemeckis and Gale are anxious to shake this reputation. They want to get out from under Spielberg's shadow, so to speak. So they get the screenplay for Back to the Future in sellable enough shape. And as I mentioned, they take it to every studio in town, every production company. So, Eric, they got turned down 40 different times. Everybody said no.
Even like, listen, this is what some deem as a perfect film. Mm-hmm. Even in screenplay form, it had to be 60% of the way there, and everybody was like, no, yeah. that is horribly wrong. Everyone needs to be they need to all be brought together and all fired collectively. What the hell?
Well, but that's it exactly. But this goes on for 4 years. What changes it is Romancing the Stone. Zemeckis gets hired to direct that Michael Douglas, Kathleen Turner movie. Comes out in March of 1984. Sleeper hit of the year. Okay, so now finally people in town, because, you made a movie that made money and Steven Spielberg didn't direct it. Okay, come talk to us again. And so, now we'll take another look at this Back to the Future thing. And again, I want to remind you earlier on the show, we mentioned Disney wouldn't make Back to the Future because of the whole Lorraine Baines has the hots for her son, Marty. Well, Frank Price, the then president of Columbia Pictures, he goes the other way. Eric, he actually tells Zemeckis and Gale that his studio will only make Back to the Future if they do a rewrite that makes the movie raunchier. Because according to Frank, that's all the audiences from the early 1980s want. They want raunchy comedies like Animal House or Porky's. So it's like, no, Lorraine really has to go after Marty.
Oh, God.
And at this point, Zemeckis has finally had enough. And he turns to his old mentor, Spielberg, to complain about look what he says to do to our little movie. And Spielberg says to Robert, well, look, I've always liked this script, and I understand why you were trying to do it without me. But look, I actually have a production deal at Universal. Give it to me. Let me see what I can do. All right. So Spielberg takes the script to Universal management and indicates, look, I will produce this movie. And Robert just made a big hit for another studio. And so Universal reads Zemeckis and Gale's latest draft of the Back to the Future script. And they say, okay, all right, okay. We like this. But all of this on location stuff, the stuff that needs to be shot on a military base, that's going to make this movie very expensive to shoot. So I tell you what, if you change that stuff and lower the production cost of this thing by $1 million, you can make this movie here. Now, when I say on location stuff, Eric, in the original script, of Back to the Future. It was not a lightning strike, on the clock tower in Hill Valley that sent Marty McFly and that DeLorean back to 1985, but rather an atomic test.
Ew, okay.
All right.
That is slightly interesting, and I don't know how that would work. So, but yes.
Well, now, here's the beauty part of it. You can now, right now, in fact, as we're doing this show, you can go and watch what that scene was going to be like, because they not only did storyboards for the scene, which, by the way, the storyboards were drawn by Andrew Probert, the designer Imagineer that Len just mentioned on the most recent Disney Dish. But Screen Rant put this thing up, did a full video of this sequence as it was supposed to go in the original screenplay for Back to the Future. They did this back in 2010, just in time for Back to the Future's, the celebration of its 25th anniversary. So you can watch this. You can see what it would have been like in the movie. But again, Universal executives have told them that that's got to go. And so Zemeckis and Gale are like, all right, well, okay, that's our climax. I mean, that's our exciting climax in the movie. And so they're like, all right, well, if we can come up with a scene that's just as good, we'll make the cut. And so they're now set up in Steven Spielberg's the Amblin compound, the thing that Universal built for Spielberg so he would make his home at the studio. It's on the lower lot, and so Bob and Robert are holed up there trying to figure out, well, how do we change the script? So how do we get it to a point that Universal's going to say yes? And they would feel cooped up in the office, so they'd go and start walking around the lower lot. In fact, they're walking along all of those sets, the Old West set and the Europe, old little Europe, and eventually, Eric, they find themselves in Courthouse Square. And Robert and Bob are there, and again, trying to figure out, and they look up at the top of Courthouse at the clock face and say, now, wait a minute, what if? And so this is the thing. Literally, the scene that we all love in that movie with Doc Brown sliding down the wire just ahead of the lightning strike and plugging it together, Eric, that all came about as a budget cut.
Oh, man. The only time less is more? No.
Yeah.
No,
that whole 1.21 gigawatts. And by the way, while this scene got cut out of Back to the Future, Spielberg never forgot it, which is why if you, in fact, what you're going to love about watching this cut scene from the original Back to the Future is as you're watching it, it's like, I have seen this before. And yes, you have. In Indiana Jones, in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Remember the scene where Indy climbs in the fridge to survive the nuclear blast?
Right.
But
wasn't that going to be like the DeLorean, right? Wasn't it supposed to be like a refrigerator or something like that? A time traveling machine? In original scripts?
Well, but that's the interesting thing. They in fact, when you drill down into the history of Back to the Future, they talk about, for example, what are we going to do with this time machine? And it's just, well, first of all, it has to be a single inventor. It can't be like a corporation that's doing it. And then, the whole notion of, well, if it's a fridge, it's got to stay in one place, or, it's something like a fridge. Whereas if we build it into a car, it can move. It's a transportation device. We can take it places. There were a lot of interesting choices that Bob and Robert made over time. But anyway, just a couple of other quick short stories before we wrap up this week's feature. Again, coming out of Future Boy, Michael J. Fox talks about the most stressful aspect of making Back to the Future was the scene, the Enchantment Under the Sea dance scene when he plays Johnny B. Good on stage. And this is because Michael was worried that people who actually play guitar would give him crap because his fingering wasn't right. And so he was stressing it. I have to get the fingering right on that cherry red guitar. And speaking of the guitar used in that scene in Back to the Future, in honor of the 40th anniversary of the release of this Robert Zemeckis Bob Gale movie, Gibson Guitar. And Eric, this was just today they announced it. First of all, they announced that they are launching a Back to the Future guitar collection. But better, Gibson is now, they're searching for the actual cherry red guitar that Marty McFly used on stage as part of the Enchantment Under the Sea dance. In fact, folks, if you have any information about this, they've set up a website that Gibson wants you to contact them at losttothefuture.com. And by the way, there is a reward.
I was going to say, did they hire Robert Stack as well? Is he coming out in a trench coat?
There we go.
You may have seen.
All right, you may have seen. By the way, speaking of lost and things we just lost, just last week, the world lost a genuine artist, Drew Struzan. And by the way, Drew designed and then drew and painted some of the truly great movie posters of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, including that wonderful series of all three posters for the Back to the Future films. And I love it when you can see all three of those side by side. They're just glorious.
Yeah.
But anyway, Drew was only 78 when we lost him last week on October 13. And look, Eric and I want to extend our heartfelt condolences to the Struzan family, as well as to Drew's enormous circle of friends and fans. And the man will be missed. He was a giant.
Yeah, Jim. And you know what? I think we talked earlier, either on air or off air, that we do a lot of podcasts here at the network. You and Lauren actually did a tribute show on June 26th of this year about Drew, the Poster Wars. So if you guys are interested in learning a little bit more about him, the stuff is so good, you thought it was a picture.
Oh, no, absolutely. And in fact,
it's amazing.
And in fact, on the heels of that show, I literally went out and got a copy of Oeuvre with Drew Struzan, which was, the book that Drew himself put together of all of his poster work, all of his album covers, all of his individual artwork. And it's just stunning. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. It's got a front position here in my library. But yeah, just so sorry that we lost him. Just a huge talent. But anyway, on that somewhat bummer of a note, I guess we're bringing this week's edition of the Epic Universal Podcast to a close. But on the other hand, folks, if you're a Back to the Future fan, all you got to do is go to the AMC theater and get your time machine popcorn bucket, not a DeLorean, right?
Not official DeLorean. I'm not calling it that, but sure, eat up.
Okay, there we go. And by the way, if you have any topics or suggestions for future shows, and please note, that we only got the Back to the Future Day story because Eric suggested it, so I'm suggestible. So please feel free to send those in through social media or connect to us on jimhillmedia.com. And beyond that, on behalf of Mr. Hersey, thank you for listening, and we will be back next week.